we try not to overthink anything really in this band. We try to just go off feel and vibe, and if the gut feels good, that's it. There's no questions asked. We just do it.
Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
How you doing? My name's David, and I play guitar in Atræ Bilis.
And David, how would you describe the music of Atræ Bilis?
I would describe it as death metal. Yeah, I don't know. It gets a few monikers. Technical death or tech death, disso death kind of gets thrown around a little bit as well. So yeah, a little different to what we think it is, but yeah, I would call it death metal.
So I don't like to be this pedantic, but there are a number of bands on this podcast, in fact, maybe most of the bands recently, who describe themselves as death metal in one form or another.
Mm-hmm.
For you, what is death metal? What does death metal mean?
Riffs. It's riffs, man. Yeah, it's riffs, and it's a force. Yeah, I don't really know how else to explain it, but yeah.
And maybe blast beats as well? Because Atræ Bilis has quite a few of those.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think you need as many blast beats. I mean, we have blast beats, but I think that's just the tempos that we hit, and certain riffs evoke a certain feel out of drums and vice versa. You know, we like the sound of blast beats, but that's not to say that you need blast beats to be death metal. I mean, I still consider bands like Obituary and stuff to be a death metal band, and I don't know that they blast at all, do they? Yeah, I can't recall hearing it, but
And you mentioned that sometimes Atræ Bilis is referred to as technical death metal. Is that a characterization you agree with? Do you guys consider yourself technical?
no, I think in our sphere, we're just trying to write interesting songs. And so we're taking motifs and I guess recipes of our own and trying to be a little more cerebral with our musical narrative. I don't think it necessarily makes it technical. If we were to break things down and pen out how we go from section A to section B to section half of A and then section half of B, you'd probably realize that there isn't as much going on as what I feel or what we feel a lot of people's first impression is. And I think that may have a lot to do with potentially how new a lot of listeners are to our sound. I think as time goes on and people spend more time with our music, there'll be a deeper understanding with our songs and how we write our songs. But I don't necessarily think it's technical. I can understand how people may feel that the riffs are quite, or that there's a lot in the riffs, but I'm personally just trying to write riffs that I'm going to enjoy playing for 10, 20, 30 years on my own, or with the band or wherever. I don't ever really want to get bored of playing riffs, but there isn't, I genuinely wouldn't think that there's a ton of riffs in our songs. So yeah, I'm not sure, but it's almost like a dirty word because we're not trying to be like a necrophagist or an Arcspire or, one of those kind of crowning tech death bands, if you will. Not that those bands aren't great. We do feel that we're different to what those bands are setting out to do. So, yeah.
Atræ Bilis is based in Vancouver. I'm going to have to ask about your accent. Where did you grow up?
I'm a proud Australian. I grew up in Melbourne, Australia. I did live briefly in Sydney, Australia when I went back to school, but I returned to Melbourne and I was there until I was 30. And yeah, I ended up in Canada sometime thereafter. So yeah, it's an amazing scene, it's an amazing place. I miss it very much. But yeah, I guess the Australian accent's always going to be in me. Although I'm sure any Australian friends listening to this are going to hear a hybridized North American / Australian accent. I've definitely found I need to pronounce things a little differently over here to be understood. So yeah.
So how did you meet the Atræ Bilis guys? How did you get involved with the scene over there?
Well, I was going to shows for quite a few months once I got to Vancouver. I was originally kicking about Montreal and Toronto for a few months, and I loved it out there. I had friends out there that were very musical, and I really wanted to live there, but I just couldn't get the work situation sorted out. So I ended up coming over to the West Coast, and there was a job opportunity for me here. The local scene was a bit strange to an outsider. I don't think it's any surprise, even to people here in Vancouver, it can be quite a cliquey scene. And I was just a stranger, so I didn't really feel like too many people had time for me. So it was strange. So I actually met Luca, our drummer, in a record store of all places. It wasn't at a show or anything like that. And yeah, I saw he was wearing a cool t-shirt and had a cool stack of wax, and we got talking, and it ended up that he had been living in Vancouver for, I believe it was about 7 years at that point, but was originally from Belgrade, Serbia, and just asked if I wanted to jam with him. He was, as I said, I found out he was a drummer, and I had just bought a guitar again for the first time in quite some time. So we got together and we played, and there was an undeniable chemistry there. We wrote a song and enjoyed the hangout. So we just continued to jam on our own until we had enough songs to start considering having additional people join the band and get a singer and get a bass player and all those things. Originally, we actually wanted another guitar player, and so we didn't know a whole heap of people. I mean, Luca knew more people than I did, but I knew barely anybody. And we used good old Craigslist to post for a second guitar player who could also sing. And Jordan, our singer, who doesn't play guitar, reached out and said that he just really kind of liked the description of what we were posting about, and if we'd consider having him come down to the space and have a jam. And we did, and he was great. And so that's who we've been with ever since. And then the original bass player situation was a little more challenging. We tried a couple of people, and it wasn't really working out. We ended up scouring through metal archives and just applying a filter, to geolocation of Vancouver, just to see which death metal and black metal bands and adjacent style of bands the musicians were in there that may potentially like what we thought our sound was sounding like at that time. And we reached out to Brendan. He was doing a couple of really amazing solo projects on his own, and he enjoyed it. And so he joined the fold. We recorded 2 records with that lineup, and that lasted up until COVID. And during COVID, Brendan and also after recording Apexapien, Brendan just decided that he didn't want to do it anymore. And I believe Miles came into the fold through a connection that Luca had through a mutual friend that lives in his apartment complex. And we had a chat with Miles, and he's an incredible musician. He doesn't just play bass, he also plays guitar. He runs laps around me on both. And he sings as well. And he's super cool. And he's been with us for, I'm guessing 18 months now, 12, 18 months, something within that period. So it's been a bit of a mix with how we've all come together. So two Canadians and, two expats. Well, not really expats. Well, maybe we are. But,
So going back to when you and Luca first started working together, did you have a good sense of what kind of music you wanted to make? Or were you guys just kind of feeling it out as you went along?
We've never had a discussion regarding what we could or should sound like. Luca's background was in black metal primarily, but he always listened to death metal. He hadn't played in the death metal band before. And I had been in bands that were kind of death grind-ish, and then I did some post-metal stuff as well. And in a strange way, it's odd, because I think the best elements of all of those styles of music do just naturally come together with Atræ Bilis. But we've never, we never said, we want to sound like this band or that band. We all just listen to so much music together that it all just kind of coalesces into, the form that is this band, which is kind of cool. I like it that way. I feel like we'd probably be putting a ceiling over our head even if we were to say we want to play heavy music, because by doing that, you're, possibly subconsciously severing some pretty critical ties to other influences that can be really special in, death metal and other extreme forms of metal. So
you said that originally you wanted a second guitarist. When did you decide to just handle the guitars on your own? Or did you decide that second guitar isn't necessary?
No, it wasn't so much that. I think we were just, we've never really tried to force anything. I've always really liked the idea of, dual rhythm guitar tracks, just to kind of increase, areas of melody, and just to kind of add details to certain riffs that just make things a little more unique. I'm also a big fan of symmetry, and I like a lot of left-right panning and play off between two guitar parts. Personally, I just find that stuff far more interesting than lead solo types of guitar playing, which is why you don't really hear any of that in Atræ Bilis. But the guitar players that we did jam with originally were fantastic players, but it was very important to them that they used the big open spaces in our music as a field for a solo, and it just kind of felt like, well, that kind of defeats the point of having this big open section of music. It's supposed to soar, it's supposed to be cerebral, it's supposed to be meditative, it's supposed to be hypnotic. The moment that you just start blazing over the top of this, it's not music. It's not the music that we intended to write. So yeah, I just think it's just different tastes and different styles with the people here in the local scene that we played with. And that's not to say that it may not ever happen if we were to come across somebody at the right time or the right place to facilitate that. But once we started touring as well, we realized that it's quite practical with the four of us, and not just for interpersonal dynamics, but just the practicalities of space as well. Having less gear to cart around and things keeps costs down, and it just makes things a lot more feasible for us as well. So I think it's just a balancing act of that, and just making sure that when we do write songs and record songs now, if there are two guitar parts, hopefully they're not so dichotomized from one another that I can't meld them into a single melody with myself. But I am also making efforts to make sure that live my guitar sounds like two guitars with the equipment and stuff that I'm using. So I'm doing my best over here to sound like two guitars. But yeah.
I want to go back to something you said about Vancouver. Or I'm not sure if you meant specifically Vancouver, or just the Canadian scene in general.
Mm-hmm.
You described it as quirky, and you said that you were having trouble making connections to the scene. How do you characterize? I mean, as somebody who's lived outside of Canada, and I'm assuming has been involved in lots of metal scenes, how do you describe the character of the Vancouver metal scene or the Vancouver music scene?
I mean, I can't really, like, I don't really want to be one to judge. I mean, it was just my personal experience that people were just less friendly. And I mean, that could have been anything from how people perceived me to how I perceived them, right? So I don't want to jump to any conclusions there, but in my personal experience, I just found that Vancouver specifically is just kind of less open than basically any other place in Canada that I've been to. I mean, I haven't lived in any other city in Vancouver for as long as I've lived in Vancouver, but every time you even go to the island of Vancouver, Victoria, people seemingly just seem more open and social. It's always a nice break being out of here for that reason and making more friends. But yeah, I mean, Canadians at large are fantastic people. We've got friends right across the country, and over in Montreal now, actually, we spent quite a bit of time over there last year, which was great. So we're grateful for all of that. But I'm not really sure. I mean, I can try and psychoanalyze, but I kind of feel like a bit of an egomaniac trying to do that. I'm not really qualified. So.
Sure. I'm just curious because in the few scenes that I've been involved in, like I lived in New York for a while, and now I'm in Malaysia, and I do a little bit of traveling.
Mm-hmm.
When you see somebody in a black shirt with a unreadable logo on it, you immediately feel a connection in most places.
Oh, I mean that's not a thing here. I mean, I've seen people wearing like the most underground gore grind DIY shirts and thought, this is fucking sick, or my friends play in this band, like I'm going to say hi, and I don't get a response back, and I know that my greeting is being seen and heard. It's just an antisocial kind of behavior. But I also think that you're a product of your environment, and if this is the norm here, it just kind of makes sense that, if you grow up here, that's just kind of how you become. I mean, I've certainly noticed that over the time that I've been living in Vancouver, I've certainly become more of an introvert than when I was living in Melbourne or anywhere else. So, maybe it's a herd mentality. I'm not sure.
Are songs still coming together for Atræ Bilis the way they did in the beginning, with you coming up with riffs and you and
Yeah, effortlessly. I mean, I think that's really the pulse of the band. Like the heartbeat is genuinely in the rehearsal space, just playing together and jamming out ideas and just exploring where they go. It can be a little frustrating when we have to put that on hold to prepare for recording or tour. As fun as it is getting into that zone where you can really hear the songs tightening up so much they just feel airtight, but just so heavy. It's an amazing feeling, but the creative flow state is just so exciting because you really got no idea what's coming, and being in that state for long enough really does just embrace the inner child of loving this style of music. You're kind of creating something that nobody else has heard in real time. It's like cutting edge music, and being able to just quite literally just feel it flowing through you is unlike any other feeling. So I think as long as we're able to get into a room and play together, it's thankfully something that we don't ever really struggle with. In fact, we write too much music and find ourselves discarding a lot of it because it's too much. There's too many ideas in a song, and we really need to just kind of look at it from an outsider perspective and just say, this is just stupid, So sometimes we come back to things, but rarely. I mean, if I were to keep a log of how many unused ideas we have, we'd probably have 6 or 7 albums, honestly. So it's a free flowing energy, apparently. So very grateful for that.
And it's the three of you, Luca and Miles, together in the studio, coming up with stuff.
Yeah, so Miles plays in another band. Well, he plays in another couple of local bands, and sometimes their rehearsals cross over with our rehearsals. Usually Luca, myself are in there without fail Tuesday, Thursday, Sundays. And we will be working on ideas together. And if somebody misses a rehearsal, we'll, the spine of the band, the drums and the guitars will still be pummeling forward, and then Miles will catch up. So it's cool. I mean, typically the way that we write will be drums and guitar, and we'll just want to make sure that we have the arrangements for the songs really locked down before we start thinking about the details of just extra riff ideas, extra bass ideas, and then lastly vocals. But we are cognizant of keeping spaces open for everybody as well. So it's usually Luca and I would say just over time it's just developed that way. I guess we've been playing together since 2018 at this point, that there's just a groove that works there. So it's usually all founded from those foundations.
I'm curious, the songwriting process that you described, how long would it take you to write a song?
I mean, some songs we've written in a single rehearsal. Others we've worked and reworked. The first time Luca and I ever played together, we wrote Sulphur Curtain, which is the second track off our first release. I believe Inward to Abraxas, which was our latest single, was also written in a rehearsal, if not 2. I remember those ones being quite quick. But then some of our other songs have just taken us a little bit longer. We've tried some things, it didn't work out. We'll come back to them. I remember Ectopian was actually the second song that we wrote. And that, for whatever reason, just a lot of things we were trying weren't working. We didn't force it, but we were writing that in conjunction with some other ideas that we're playing around with. And that one probably took us closer to 2 or 3 months or something like that. But after that, there was such a big tool set for us to draw on, because we knew what type of transitions work with different riffs or tempo changes or drum beats, or, we were still learning our language and I guess our musical vocabulary. So things are a lot easier now, and it's almost got to a point where there's this unspoken communication between Luca and myself, where if he's playing a drum beat, I'm instantly hearing a guitar riff, and vice versa. And when we're jammed together, we know exactly when to cut something short for a drum fill, or some grabs and chokes, or something cool and heavy like that. So yeah, I think the longer that we play together, the easier it'll be, and the more we'll continue to push ourselves with trying different ways of approaching different ideas. We'll develop more. I hope. I mean, I hope that there are songs on Aumicide that have been developed from Apexapien, which were developed from Divinity, and yeah.
You want there to be a feeling of continuity between the releases?
No, I'm not. I mean, I can't speak for the rest of the guys, but I couldn't give a shit if like one album sounded more or less like another. I think it's just important that every album is just the best that we can possibly create with the with what we have. And obviously, budget's a big thing, and time's another big thing. But too much time can be really detrimental to bands as well, and just create a stagnance. So there does need to be some discipline, but yeah, I'm not really sure how our sound will transmogrify over time. It may get more subtle in softer songs, and it may get more heavy and brutal in faster songs. But as long as our songwriting is maturing every time, and as long as we're able to produce records that are legible to the ear, so that our ideas are being expressed in a clear way, that's all we really think about when it comes to our next releases. We don't really look backwards and consider if something that we did previously matters now, or should in time is done.
So, Homicide will be released on the 19th of April through 20 Buck Spin. You describe songwriting as something that you guys do continually, when you're not rehearsing or getting ready for shows or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
When did you know that you had enough music for a new album? When did you know that you guys were ready?
I mean, Aumicide, we started doing pre-production for Aumicide, and it was quite a while ago. It was like close to mid-year 2022, I believe. It could have been 2021. So I'm really bad with dates here. But if we don't have touring going on, it really doesn't take us too long. We knew that Aumicide was done when we had 30 plus minutes of material, really. Like there'd been a few songs that had been discarded to make sure that we were happy with the 30 minutes that we had. But typically what happens is we will book studio time and we'll continue writing right up until the moment that we have to hit the studio. And if there's a stronger couple of tracks that have been written between the time that we've booked the studio space and the time in which we enter the studio space, we'll use those strongest songs and just throw out what we didn't use. So I believe, yeah, we had the first 30 minutes worth of material, and then we reached out to Christian, and then Christian let us know of his availabilities and his schedule, and then we kept writing, and then we wrote another 10 minutes worth of material. So that's another third of an album, or another third of the material effectively of what we had. And we were fine tuning the final track on the record, and we did actually, no, sorry, that percentage is off, because we did actually write Aumicide in the studio one lunch when Christian went to go pick up his car from a repair. Luca was in the fish tank of the studio and I was behind the console, and yeah, we just had a couple of live mics on them. We wrote that track actually, which was a first for us. So yeah.
When did you have the feeling that as you were jamming that you had a new song, and why did you decide to make that the title track?
I don't know. I can't really explain. I mean, I think we had an idea that we were going to try write a song in our own way that was akin to something off Disintegration from The Cure. We love that record and that band. So we just had like a general vibe. I think that if we had time, we were going to just try and jam. And it was just Luca and I up in the studio at that point because Luca was recording his drums. So yeah, it's a very stripped back song. I'm not sure if you've heard the full album or not yet, but yeah, it's just a jammer. It's basically a way to open up the second side of the record. And instead of it really sounding like an intro, I guess it kind of sounds more like some kind of funeral ceremony of some sorts. But yeah, I mean, it's simple, but yeah, I think it took us maybe, I don't know, 30 minutes or something to just get the skeleton of the structure together. And yeah, we just laid down a couple of scratch guitar tracks, and there was enough there that it was, we were happy with that section of music, just kind of breaking up the rest of the album. We still like it, so I guess that's a positive. It's not the track that we felt that shouldn't be there on the album. So yeah, I don't know. I guess we try not to overthink anything really in this band. We try to just go off feel and vibe, and if the gut feels good, that's it. There's no questions asked. We just do it.
So we spoke about how Aumicide came together in the studio, but you also mentioned that you discard a number of the material that you guys work on if you don't feel it's strong enough. I'm curious what happens to that material, the stuff that you don't use. Do you have demos recorded somewhere?
No, it's usually, there is one song off Apexapien that we included with pre-production. So we recorded drums and scratch guitars, but upon listening to all the songs together, it was just too much. It was just fat. So we decided to just cut that. We've never used any of that song again. And with other songs we write together in the space. So we typically will just video record ourselves playing a song that we are writing, so that when we're away from the rehearsal space, we can listen to it with fresh ears, which in itself can be really challenging because we are literally jamming every second day. So we have our personal lives and other obligations and stuff as adults. We never really get an extended break from the band to listen to it with fresh ears. But I guess those video recordings are the demo versions of our songs. And we've certainly, showed people that we're recording with, and Dave at $20 spin, and just like personal texts and stuff like, oh, working on this stuff. And then it never even makes it onto what it is that we submit. So it's just, as I said, it's just a stream. It's just, once it's gone, it's kind of gone. I mean, there's so many ideas. I know Luca, remembers, and he's like, oh yeah, remember this riff? We should bring that back. And I'm like, what fucking riff was that? There's like so many hundreds of riffs that are just, yeah, I don't know. It's just, if something comes back naturally, it will. But if something doesn't loop together with another 3 or 4 ideas that feel really strong, then it just kind of seems a little contrived to just pick at something from the past to try and insert it somewhere else. It just doesn't feel very organic. That's just not really the approach that it takes. So yeah, I guess it typically just gets forgotten about in short.
So as you mentioned, you worked with Christian Donaldson on the recording of this album. Most people probably know Christian Donaldson from being in Cryptopsy, but he's also produced and engineered a number of albums, and I believe he has his own studio now, right?
Yeah, he does. He's amazing. He's got a studio he works out of two studios, really. He's got a drumming room that he uses more central to Montreal. And then he has another fully acoustically treated space on his property at home in St. Gabriel, which I guess is kind of halfway between Montreal and Quebec City or something. I don't think it's quite a 2-hour drive, but it's an hour and a bit, which is actually really great because Christian's just such a fucking awesome and funny and enjoyable guy to be around. The car rides are genuinely as fun as the recording process itself. So yeah, he's working for himself. And then there are a couple of other engineers that help him with just a lot of the actual engineering, the cleaning up and the editing and the mix preparation and, just kind of going through tracks to make sure that things are settled and ready to work with. And they're all great too. So Dom was working on this with Christian and Dom is, fucking awesome guy. I miss him quite a lot. He was actually also kind enough to loan me his own personal guitar to track with because we just felt that, through a shoot off of different instruments, it just sounded best. So he set it up for me and let me use it. And that was before I even got to share some putzing with him or anything, So yeah, he's got a cool little crew and his wife, Sarah, is amazing. She kind of looks after all the books and everything else. So yeah, I guess although he's got his own his cool little production team working there with him, which is super cool.
Is this the Grid?
No, it's not the Grid. This is just Christian Donaldson. Yeah, I believe at some point he was doing some work collaboratively with the Grid, but I don't think that partnership it's not a partnership anymore. So he's just doing his own thing, super successfully and with power. So if anybody wants to reach out to Christian, reach out to him directly and not the Grid.
So Christian also worked on your previous album, Apexapien.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say he brings to your sound?
Well, I mean, the way we got in contact with Christian originally was, we've been familiar with Christian's work for a long time, and he's amazing. And we did get a couple of quotes from a couple of different mixing engineers. The plan for Apexapien was to record it in Vancouver and then outsource it for mixing. And the engineer that we had felt was going to mix our record very well, and I guess they did in their own way. It just didn't end up gelling with our expectations of how we wanted the record to sound. So much so that we actually pulled the plug. We paid out for their labor for the mixing and the engineering that they'd done at that point, but we effectively abandoned ship and found ourselves in a position where we had to remix Apexapien, and I certainly didn't want to take that on. So we reached out to Christian, and at that point, Christian was so overloaded with work that he could do it, but he didn't have a great deal of time. And we were ecstatic because we were confident that he could do it. And I guess what's super cool is although we knew he could do it, hearing his first preliminary mix back of Apexapien just smoked anything else that we'd heard from any other engineer. It was like night and day, So because of our experience with him on Apexapien, there were maybe a couple of other producers that we had maybe thought, oh, would it be cool? Would it not be cool? But I think that in our heart of hearts, we always from day dot, from day dot of working with Christian, we knew that he was going to be the guy. And yeah, we had a chat with him, and we did speak about our expectations and how happy we were with his help on the other album, that we just wanted to let him take the reins with not just mixing, but recording, engineering, mastering, the whole package. So yeah, I mean, I guess the rest is history. He was absolutely incredible, and I can't imagine that Aumicide could have been produced any other way.
And Christian handled everything up to the master, right?
He did everything. He mastered as well. So yeah, I mean, he put the mics on the kit, and he spent the assets to $20 spin. It was all him. Yeah, and his team. Yeah.
So by the time people hear this podcast, the album will be out, and I believe you guys will be on tour. Do you want to say anything about the tour that you have coming up?
Yeah, please come out. It can be quite an investment for bands outside of the US to legally tour the US. There's work permits that need to be put in place before any of the merch is invested in, and all those things. So whenever you see a band passing through America that isn't from America, just these guys have had to go through a lot of paperwork and a lot of stresses to make sure that they can hit those venues and play to you. It's a little different to just jumping into a car and just driving a few states over. So, it doesn't just go to us, but it just goes to everybody else out there. And we've just got a lot of respect for any band outside of America breaking into that market, because it really is, a demarcation between who's serious and who's not. So yeah, we do appreciate everybody that comes out to come see us. Super excited to be playing with Zoth and Atoll. We made a lot of really cool friends on the West Coast on our tour last year. So very excited to be hanging out and seeing them again. But yeah, just come out, have fun, say hello. Yeah, we'll be eternally grateful for it.
And you guys are playing Northwest Terrorfest as well, right?
We are, yeah. Yeah, it's going to be great. It's a really cool mixed bill, actually. So we get to see a couple of bands on the same night that we're playing that aren't metal at all. Nox Novacula comes to mind. And I'm a big Giant Squid fan. So I'm, really, really excited for that. Yeah, we've got another fest coming up as well that haven't been announced. And we do have more US dates being booked currently that I can't really talk about just yet, but make sure that you follow us on all the socials to make sure that you don't miss out on those announcements as we start rolling those out.
And hopefully, if all goes well, I'll see you guys at Northwest Terrorfest.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, please do. Come and say hello. We'll hang out. Are you there for the full fest, or are you just there for a couple of days? Or?
Yeah, I should be there the entire weekend. It's Thursday to Saturday, right? Or is it Friday to Sunday?
Mm-hmm. Awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see Repulsion. I haven't seen Repulsion since I saw them in Maryland Death Fest now. It was 2013. So yeah, that's definitely one of the sets that's going to rip.
So by the time people hear this or see this on YouTube, Aumicide will be out through $20 spin. David, please tell everyone how they can order the album. What's the best way to get it?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, if you come into the tour, that we would happily sell you, and thank you for your purchases. Anywhere online, the primary place you really going to want to go is $20 spin, but there should be a few distro lists elsewhere. So as long as you're just Googling Atræ Bilis, Aumicide, you'll see links for those. There's also Bandcamp. There are copies of Apexapien also available through $20 spin. So there's vinyl, there's CD, there's tapes, there's shirts too. The only place I think you can really find Divinity if you're looking for it is it's probably on Discogs or something at this point. I think unfortunately that's out of print. And we do have a big cartel. So if there's any merch that you see us posting on any of our social media links and you'd like to see it, or if we do have any leftover tour merchandise, you can just go to atrabilis.bigcartel.com and we will send anything that you order to you directly.
Do you want to say anything about the vinyl version that 20 Buck Spin is putting out for Aumicide?
Yeah, there's a few different variants. So, if you're the elitist that just likes black, it comes in black. Otherwise, yeah, I believe there's an orange variant. There's a couple of other fancy, swirly looking things that Dave from 20 Buck Spin has organized, which looks cool. I guess vinyl, we listen to a lot of vinyl, so the way that we've kind of designed the song sequencing is more favorable to flipping the records. So there is a side A and a side B. The concept of the album is, it's about simulation theory and rebirth. Like all their albums have got a theme of rebirth. So there is a death and there is a birth on this record as well. Hence side A and side B. So yeah, if you're flipping that record, you'll definitely pick up on that more than you would if you weren't flipping the CD, I guess, or listening to it digitally.
So you mentioned your socials. What's the best way to follow the band and find out about the tour dates that will be coming up later on in the year?
Oh, look, as long as you can spell our band name, Atrae Bilis, you'll find that at the end of Facebook and Instagram. There are primary platforms at the moment. I don't know how many people even really use Facebook anymore, but those are the main channels. Feel free to direct message us through those, and we're happy to chat with anybody. And if any of those communications need to be passed on to management or the label or our booking agent, we can certainly help out there as well. But don't feel like you can't be a stranger.
Very cool. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, just really appreciate the interview and anybody that's listening to this interview and has got to the end. Yeah, it's been really cool. We're just super excited for everybody to hear Aumicide. It was a lot of energy that we put into it. So it's nice that it's out there and creating a life of its own now. And, we hope that some of you find something in it. And yeah, we hope it's a positive thing that you do find in it.
Very cool. Thank you so much, David.
Absolutely, man. Thank you very much.